Interlude, each gives concession. Subaru, and done. Subaru sticks the 2 twigs into the heap of snow before him, then wipes the sweat from his brow. It's an amateur work thrown together in an hour, but he still has to be impressed at the results. Murmurs of admiration spread through the onlooking crowd as well. Subaru, yeah, I must have a talent for this stuff. If we're ever hurting for food money, we can make it snow, and make it as the esteemed snow artists of the nation. Emilia, stop being so silly. I'm not going to make it snow to help you with that. But, it really does look so good. Says Emilia with a white puff of breath as she sits on the stone steps, observing Subaru's work. Reflected in her amethyst eyes is Subaru's snowman, but since labeling it as a snowman wouldn't quite describe it correctly, perhaps it's better to call it a snow sculpture. There are now about 20 sculptures of Puck crafted from the leftover snow in Sanctuary. What had compelled Subaru to make so many? Ask him, and he would only be able to answer with copious romanticism. But it's making Emilia and Sanctuary's people happy, so the shallow rationale will suffice. I'm sure that you're not trying to be, but you truly are an idiot, Barusu. Says someone else, judging Subaru harshly. The speaker is a girl, seated on the steps with her head on Emilia's lap. She has dressed out of her trademark-made uniform and currently wears a simple white outfit. Her clothes burned as she wavered between life and death. While her face does look paler than usual, neither her tone nor venom suffer for it. So everything's good. Subaru, the 2 of you keep ganging up to call dumb. I did put in quite a bit of work throughout this whole mess, so can't you be nicer to me? I could use a little more commendation. Emilia, you're right. Thank you so much, Subaru. But I was the one doing work when you were away, so actually I'd like commendation too. Subaru, the stuff you've started saying, Emilia-tan. Though, Emilia does deserve praise for protecting Sanctuary during Subaru's absence. It's uncertain whether the residents would have escaped the hair had Emilia not instructed them to go in the tomb. And had Emilia not cleared the trials, there would have been nowhere to take shelter anyway. Neither is it certain that Subaru would have thought to use the tomb as a shelter, since his thoughts had been fixated on escaping before the snow came. Subaru, well, we'll call it a happy mistake that the men's brigade came back and sparked your motivation, Emilia-tan. Seriously, thank you. This is true for previous affairs too, but this whole series of events involved far too many gambles. It feels like Subaru couldn't manage on his own, and constantly had others rescuing him. Even though he decided to take the hardest parts upon himself, ideally. Emilia, but of course though. If you do absolutely everything for me, Subaru, I'm going to stop knowing what I'm even doing here. You've done enough zipping around that it's okay for you to rest. A little. Subaru, no, it's just that when I want to help with all the brains and brawn I don't have, running around like an idiot's all I can do. Emilia, but that's going to change, yes? Says Emilia teasingly, suppressing a laugh as she strokes Ram's head. Subaru instantly understands, and rubs his finger under his nose as he replies with a yeah. He made many mistakes and others were constantly rescuing him, but he managed to save basically everything he needed to. And he would never agonize over these issues alone again. Subaru would no longer hesitate to rely on others, would not slacken his own efforts either, and his people to give him a good kick in the ass when he needs it. Subaru. Subaru looks up, shifting his gaze from the clearing to the tomb. His gaze goes past Emilia as she sits on the steps, all the way to the mouth of the tomb. Inside that place, its trial mechanism absent, are 2 people. What could they be discussing inside? It does prey on Subaru's mind, but... Subaru, well, even I have enough tact not to interrupt them. There's a wealth of opportunities they have to speak, but they couldn't stand to wait. Surely. They have mountains of things to discuss. A girl and a man face each other with a transparent coffin between them. Girl, mother. Murmurs the girl as she looks at the woman in the crystal coffin. It feels like she's floating, like her feet aren't touching the ground. Some of it is from the remaining rush of battle, some of it is from her feelings of loss and liberation from losing her old haunt, and most of it is from the unreal sight before her. She had never thought that she would see her mother again. The woman in the coffin, the witch, Echidna, looks not at all different from Beatrice's memories. Long, white, beautiful hair alongside her intelligent yet gentle features. It vividly revives memories of how she smiled at Beatrice, though it only happened rarely. Beatrice, Betty, wasn't able to keep her promise to you, I suppose. I'm sorry. Beatrice strokes the coffin, beginning the 400-year reunion with an apology. When they parted, Echidna had instructed Beatrice to give her stockpile of knowledge to they. Had given her abundant books to fill the archive, and a gospel that told the future. Beatrice no longer has either. The gospel telling the future that Echidna desired of Beatrice, and all of the knowledge that Echidna amassed, has departed the world as ashes. Beatrice, Betty never even met they, and the books have burned, in fact. I've done excessively many things I must apologize for, I suppose. I'm a terrible daughter, thinks Beatrice. A foolish daughter who could not achieve even one of her mother's requests, even with 4 centuries. Now she is meeting her mother who she cannot even face, and should be apologizing profusely, but... You look rarer, more refreshed, mutters the man across from her, easily disclosing her thoughts. Beatrice glances up to see a man with long hair arise from the dim, smiling weakly. It's Roswell. He's supposed to be a familiar face, but Beatrice cannot keep herself from feeling off-put by him. Perhaps because his eyes, always crazed in pursuit of his goals ever since Beatrice had met him, now look uncertain, and because he is missing his clown makeup, his face bare. Beatrice, you best me in terms of refreshed. In fact, Roswell. Making my presence without cosmetics means violating the instructions from your predecessor, I suppose. Roswell, the clown makeup was a sort of war paint for me, you see. Wearing it let me interact with others spiritedly, as though I were donning a mask. But there's something I realized. Beatrice, yes? Roswell, that regardless of the makeup, I am an absolute clown. So how meaningful is it, truly, that I neglect my cosmetics? Beatrice, I see, in fact. Beatrice nods as Roswell gives a joking shrug. She fiddles with her pigtails in silence before going on. Beatrice, now. Beatrice, you must have things to say to Mother, I suppose. Reunion with her has been your family's deepest wish, in fact. Roswell says nothing. Beatrice, you mark perhaps the 10th Roswell since the progenitor who directly knew Mother, I suppose. Lords of the Mathers family have been short-lived for generations, so the visitors to the archive shifted rather steadily, in fact. You've been different ever since childhood, I suppose. Beatrice may not have been deeply involved in the history of the Mathers family, but she did watch from aside how their affairs progressed. The first Roswell was Echidna's only student. Though he lost almost all of his magical ability in his fight with the warlock Hector, he did not give up on being Echidna's student. He frequented the archive even after Echidna's death, disregarding the dazed Beatrice as he obsessively searched for something, and likely gave that something to his descendant before dying. Ever since, all the descendants from Roswell's line demonstrated magical capabilities bordering on those of their progenitor, and the Mathers family expanded. Now is the current Roswell. The man standing in front of Beatrice. This Roswell exhibited the most supreme talent out of all the Roswells yet. He was such a genius that, secretly, even Beatrice had to shiver. His power eclipsed that of the progenitor, who Echidna had singled out personally, and could have done anything he wanted with his claim as one of the strongest magicians in the world. Beatrice, you had all that talent, and you still failed to escape the Mathers curse. In fact, your family has been entranced with thoughts of reuniting with my deceased mother, the path a cruel one you fixedly walked. I do sympathize with you somewhat, I suppose. Roswell, do you? But how are you and we any different? You spent 4 centuries bound by the words of your deceased mother. It's identical. Or rather, unlike my family shifting over the generations, you suffered pain and solitude beyond what anyone can empathize. We did what we needed to strive forward toward our goal. You simply suffered in place. Says Roswell, his words even graver than Beatrice's. In the end, they're both bad, she thinks. Roswell's family has inherited the same feelings over lives upon short lives, in pursuit of a single reunion. Beatrice had been trapped in an empty cage for her immortal life, waiting for the day that she could fulfill her promise. An objective onlooker would see them as equally foolish clowns. The two glare at each other in silence. But their silent competition ends when Roswell averts his gaze. Roswell, this is a tedious argument. When two fools point at the other whilst mocking their foolishness, we begin crossing the boundaries of vain comedy. Beatrice, you are correct there, in fact. Roswell, do you mind me asking something? Roswell raises his finger. Beatrice silently looks up, expressing her consent by neglecting to reject him. Roswell looks down at Echidna as she sleeps in the coffin. Roswell, did Subaru-kun manage to be your they? The word they makes Beatrice swallow her breath. She has never spoken directly with Roswell about they. But Beatrice does not think it strange for him to learn about her from sources outside her knowledge. And thinking back on it, the people who had visited the archive until now had ultimately been brought there by Roswells up to the previous generation. The Roswells easily could have heard the story from them and passed it on to their descendants. And frankly you could say that even Subaru had been brought there by Roswell. Not that Subaru would accept it if you told him so. Roswell, why are you laughing? Beatrice, sorry, I suppose. I'm not laughing at you, Roswell, in fact. It just made me imagine something amusing, I suppose. It amuses Beatrice how she managed to figure, with pinpoint accuracy, what the black-haired man would say. He's just that straightforward, perhaps. She doesn't want to think any further into it than that. Either way, Beatrice shakes her head. Beatrice, that man is. Subaru is not fit to be my they in fact. Roswell, HRM. Beatrice, Subaru isn't nearly qualified to inherit Mother's archive of knowledge, I suppose. He has no mind to educate himself with the knowledge or use it for his purposes, and he lacks the fundamental background to do either, in fact. And he looks dumb, and he's flimsy, and he's useless at magic, and his legs are short, I suppose. He isn't Betty's awaited they in any capacity. Roswell, that's Suwun's the harsh opinion. Beatrice, exactly, I suppose, Betty is harsh in fact. And so I rebuffed every opportunity that came to me over these 4 centuries. I rebuffed them with they in fact. Beatrice does feel something like guilt towards all those who tried to take her out of the archive, when she thinks of it now. Not all of them had reached out to Beatrice while thinking only in their own interests. Some of them had spoken kindly to her. But Beatrice cast away every single hand that reached for her. Beatrice, I know that I should have chosen they, I suppose. That I should have faced everyone who called to me, individual by individual, and properly thought out my answer, in fact. I was meant to choose someone suitable to inherit the archive, Echidna's knowledge, that has to be what it was, I suppose. Roswell, however, you say that the one you picked, Subaru Kuan, is unfit to be they? Beatrice, I do in fact. There's no issue, I suppose. Betty's choice is Subaru, in fact. Not they. I chose Subaru, I suppose. Beatrice sees how Roswell's breath catches and his eyes open wide. It must be a difficult answer for him to accept, considering how he has devoted himself to Echidna. Beatrice had been in the exact same position as him until only a moment ago. She understands how Roswell feels so much that it hurts. And because she understands, she has to explain it at length. Beatrice, Subaru laughed at me when I begged him to be they in fact. He crowed that he could make me happier than someone I've never seen, I suppose. Roswell, what a prideful thing to say. Beatrice, I don't dislike that forcefulness in fact. Rather than enticing her with polite speech, explaining to her what she should do, and clarifying how he would use Echidna's knowledge, he was utterly candid. Roswell, but no matter what he preaches, Subaru Kuan will not place you in first. It's obvious simply by looking at him, you must already recognize this. Beatrice, you don't seem to understand, I suppose, Roswell. Roswell, I don't? Beatrice, Betty didn't leave the archive because she's Subaru's number 1 in fact. I left the archive because I want Subaru to be my number 1, I suppose. Choose me, he said. I'll be too lonely to live without you, he said. Convenient prattle, she thought. Pleasant bullshit, she thought. But it swayed Beatrice's heart. It resonated. It took her heart, sealed stuck in one place for 400 years, and jolted it. Now that she knows the freedom she felt the instant she took his hand and left the archive, and how it almost brought her to tears, her heart just won't stop. Beatrice, abandoning my post may disqualify me as Mother's spirit, but I don't mind, in fact. Betty is contractor, not Suki Subaru's spirit, I suppose. My regret and shame for that is gone, I suppose. Roswell might consider it a betrayal. He had also been bound for 4 centuries by Echidna's curse, and perhaps Beatrice's announcement that she escaped it first was a betrayal to him. She didn't escape by fulfilling her role, but by abandoning it. If she's going to face her mother, or face Roswell, she has to rationalize that. Beatrice. Her heart is already resolved. She has already taken that hand. Beatrice is going to live a life so vivid it never fades to sepia. Something so intense that, no matter how the years drag on, she never forgets those important to her. So she keeps silent, waiting for Roswell to reply. Roswell, you don't have to brace yourself. I'm not the witch Echidna's spokesman. I have no right to intrude on your answer, whatever it may be. Just do what you wish. Beatrice, Roswell. Roswell, and even had you not abandoned them, you would have never fulfilled Echidna's orders. Because I would have prioritized my own desires over you and sacrificed you. If we are speaking of betrayals, that constitutes a significant one. Beatrice. Penitently, Roswell acknowledges his wrongdoings for what happened in the mansion. Just as Beatrice had realized in the archive, Roswell was the one plotting to take Beatrice's life. She had reasoned it the result of the gospel. Though she doesn't see how it all connects. Beatrice, Roswell. What happened to your gospel, I suppose? Roswell, it's burned to nothing. Thanks to a wicked maid who deified her master. The future is in ashes now. And perhaps everything is. Beatrice, everything is hollow and the future lies imperceptible, would be something, but you look considerably refreshed, in fact. Roswell, I wonder if I am. Roswell casts his gaze down in reply to Beatrice's perfect repeat of their previous conversation. He reaches for Echidna in the coffin, for her untouchable fingertips. Roswell, I'm sad that I've lost the definite path to the answer I seek, and scared. But perhaps I'm also joyed to read a story that I never could have read before. Though, I haven't felt so in over 4 centuries now, so I can't tell whether it's legitimate. Beatrice. Beatrice scrunches her brows. Something feels off about that statement. Seeing her confusion makes Roswell smile slightly. Roswell, we haven't spoken nearly enough. He says with some self-deprecation. Roswell, you can't dismiss it as being beyond our control. At first there was need to be blindly fixated, but after that we did have time. We spent so much time in the same mansion. And even so, even though we had seen the same things, I kept avoiding you, like I was scared of talking about it. Beatrice, Roswell, what are you trying to say, I suppose? Roswell, I'm saying that it could have been, that we could have spent our last 400 years like we did in teacher's laboratory together. Beatrice, teach. Finding an old, familiar word in Roswell's quiet speech, Beatrice swallows her breath. She breathes a shaky breath as she swallows down the implications. Beatrice, impossible, are you, Roswell? Roswell, I've always been Roswell? Beatrice, no. Not like that, you have to know what I mean, I suppose. Roswell, I'm only joking. And you're correct. It's me, Beatrice. Roswell. The instant he interrupts himself, Beatrice sees Roswell in double. She sees a tall man with long navy hair, and a young man with hair the same color. That is the youth who adored Echidna, abounding in wits as he tagged along everywhere behind her. Beatrice, but then. Roswell, how? Roswell, I'm using one of teacher's theories from her hunt for immortality, soul transcription. I adopted the least risky of the experiments conducted in this sanctuary, and tested it on myself. Beatrice, soul transcription, that's the experiment to transcribe your consciousness and memories into an empty vessel, achieving a subjective immortality, but that experiment ended in failure when the souls failed to adhere, in fact. Roswell, transcribed souls are pretty poor at adhering to vessels when they're empty. That was a setback, but if the issue is a problem of familiarity between the soul and vessel, then I overcame that problem by increasing that familiarity quotient. The research faced setbacks due to problems of familiarity between vessel and soul. After Louis Meyer became the nexus of sanctuary, Echidna's crazed thirst for knowledge led her to consider adopting the crystallized Louis for other experiments. But the Louis doubles lacked any quality that let them accept foreign souls, and the experiment ended in failure. Roswell is saying that he bested this issue by associating the vessel with the soul. After mulling over this, Beatrice finally understands what Roswell's presence here truly means. By transcribing his soul into the body of his descendants, entities close to himself, the first Roswell continuously extended the path to reach his goal. Roswell, are you going to call me inhuman, Beatrice? Beatrice says nothing. Roswell, are you going to call it inhuman that I, desiring only my reunion with teacher, committed the atrocity of assembling my ignorant children as vessels? Roswell's words stab into Beatrice. But the way that Roswell gazes so calmly at her makes it almost seem that he's waiting for her to lambaste him. So Roswell wants to face judgment too? Just like her, when she informed him that she abandoned her contract with Echidna? Roswell must want to ask Beatrice, who knew Echidna, about the morality of his actions. About his 400-year obsession, his unerring and unrequited love that has done nothing but inconvenience others. Beatrice, it's not my job to say anything about it, in fact. I know how this sounds, but Betty's relationships with your descendants were shallow, I suppose. Though thinking on it now, they were all just you in fact. So I feel no disgust that you founded yourself on your children outside of the gut reaction, I suppose. My thoughts on it are yuck, in fact. Roswell, yuck, ha. Ho harsh. Beatrice, but that's all I think, I suppose. Actually, I'm overjoyed that a friend from 400 years ago is still alive, in fact. Roswell, I see. Roswell closes his eyes. That might not have been the reply that Roswell was looking for, but Beatrice doesn't care. Beatrice is conveying her emotions honestly. That's how she resolved to be when she left the archive. And now. Beatrice, Roswell. Squat down for a moment, I suppose. Roswell, squat? Here? Roswell tilts his head as Beatrice points to the ground beside her. Beatrice nods. Roswell's eyes widen as he obediently squats down on the spot. Beatrice watches Roswell squat down as she removes her right shoe. She grasps it firm in her right hand. Beatrice, grin and bear it, in fact. Roswell, gah. Roswell's face now rests at the perfect height to get slapped with a shoe. The satisfying slap echoes through the room as it whacks Roswell's face aside. He puts his hand to his reddened cheek, eye spinning. Beatrice puts her shoe back on during his confusion. Beatrice, since I'm generous, I'll say that's enough to forgive you, I suppose. It's just consequences speaking for consequences, in fact. Subaru's going to forgive you too, so I may as well let you off, I suppose. Roswell, and I think that's your hindsight bias speaking after everything ended with no deaths. Beatrice, it is, in fact. Also, Subaru's amazing for all the work he did to prevent any deaths, I suppose. You ought to take a lesson from him, in fact. Roswell. Ha 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 ha. Really now. I ought to take a lesson from him. Ah ha ha. My God, is that not genuinely humorous? Roswell laughs as if Beatrice, hands on her hips, just told an excellent joke. He cannot keep himself from pitching back in laughter and bonking his head on the wall. Then he strikes the back of his head against the wall several times more, before giving a deep sigh. Roswell, sorry. But I don't feel that I've done anything wrong. Let me state that much. Beatrice, whatever, I suppose. If you're going to apologize, do it the others, in fact. Roswell gives Beatrice's curt statement a nod. Still seated on the ground, he looks up at the coffin. And? Roswell, Beatrice. What follows is a discussion only between you and me. Beatrice. Roswell's lowered voice makes Beatrice narrow her eyes. Beatrice crosses her arms and jerks her chin to say, well, we'll see what you have to say. Roswell places his hand on the coffin as he pulls himself to his feet, and gazes at Echidna. His odd-colored eyes teem with maniacal passion. Roswell, if it were possible to truly see teacher again, would you assist me in it? Subaru, man, they're really not coming out. I know they have a bunch of stuff to talk about, but isn't this too much? Impatient with the stale situation, Subaru pouts as he waits in the clearing. He has already made 10 more snowmen. There are now 30 sculptures of Puck making various expressions, transfixing Emilia and Sanctuary's residents. And Ram, who had quite enviably been borrowing Emilia's lap for the past while, has recovered considerably, and now leans easily against the stone steps. But since her gaze keeps shifting toward the tomb, it's clear that she's worried about what's going on inside. Beatrice has been awoken, and Roswell has backed down. Subaru doubts that anything violent will happen, but he does understand Ram's concerns. They haven't heard Roswell say for himself that he's calmed down after his fit. But they're assuming that he isn't okay. Subaru, well, we're just leaving that to Biko. Beatrice has known Roswell for even longer than Ram has. And Beatrice was the one to tell them that the female corpse in the tomb was Echidna's. It's best that the two of them talk alone if they're going to be doing it in the corpse's presence. Subaru can get involved on the topic of what they're doing with Echidna's corpse afterwards. No issue. Subaru, and it'll be easier to talk about our future course after we meet up with Garfield and the others. If they manage to escape the mansion safely, then they should be coming straight to Sanctuary. Subaru asked the men's brigade to drive their carriage back to Arlem Village too. They should meet up with everyone by tomorrow night at the latest. They need to deal with the snow-covering Sanctuary and assess damages. Considering how long that will take, it's best that they do have this free time. And also for the sake of their nerves. By focusing on making snowmen, Subaru has managed to more or less calm down emotionally. He should be able to hold a peaceful conversation with Roswell. He's able. Yes, he is able. He rather considers himself able. Emilia, good work, Subaru. Why are flailing your arms around? Subaru, I mean, nothing. I'm not shadowboxing his practice to beat that fucker's face in. He'll probably get me first anyway. Emilia, really? Says Emilia beside him, tilting her head and looking confused. She looks cheerfully over the rows of snow sculptures. Emilia, there's a whole mountain of Pucks. I know he'd be happy to see this. Subaru, would he? I'm imagining him complaining like, but I thought I was prettier than that. Emilia, oh, that did sound like him. Puck, he's sleeping right now. Mutters Emilia as she withdraws a blue crystal from her breast pocket. The jewel has settled down into a state where it glows a deep blue, reflecting the sunlight on the snow as Emilia holds it. Puck, devoid of any contract with Emilia, is sealed inside this crystal. Subaru, but you can't summon him like you could before. Emilia, no, I can't. This crystal isn't pure enough to seal a spirit as strong as Puck. He's staying inactive so that the crystal doesn't break, but I don't think I can touch him or talk to him like this. Subaru, gotta get a better gemstone. Something like the old green one. The crystal pendant hanging from Emilia's neck. It shattered into pieces following the cessation of Puck's contract, and apparently was quite a rare stone. Puck apparently had it with him when he first contracted Emilia, so not even she knows where to acquire one. Emilia, but I'll definitely get a good gemstone and bring Puck back someday. Then, there are so many things I want to talk about with him. There's everything he kept quiet from me and everything I discovered because of it. Emilia lovingly strokes the gem's face, her amethyst eyes full of determination. She looks so stunningly beautiful that Subaru has to swallow his breath. Emilia notices this and glances up at him with a questioning hum. He rubs his nose. Subaru, no, it's sorta. Emilia-tan, you've changed. I mean, you've always been cute, but now it's like you're strong too? Emilia, if I am, then it's thanks to you and everyone else. I'm always only ever getting things from others. I want to be able to repay everyone soon. Subaru, I mean, that's the same case here about the only ever getting things thing. Subaru and Emilia both keenly feel their powerlessness. But that doesn't mean they're going to lick each other's wounds. Subaru gets that impression from Emilia, which he finds both heartening and isolating. He finally got some of the confidence and strength for him to support her, and then she dashes so far ahead that she doesn't need it. It feels like he could run after her forever, and he'd never catch up. Emilia, by the way, Subaru, Subaru, MHM? Emilia, they're taking a long time in the tomb. MHM, it sure is long. Subaru submerges himself in sentimentality, when Emilia awkwardly calls to him. She glances over to the tomb, which sits there the same as ever. But Emilia's face is steadily changing color. Her cheeks grow flushed, and seeing how the intense blush reaches to the tips of her pointed ears, Subaru panics. Subaru, Emilia-tan. Your face just flashed a red, I mean, are you okay? Emilia, I am okay. I am absolutely composed. Now I would, like to discuss a certain matter. Subaru, I'm indeed. For some reason having Emilia speak politely makes Subaru wind up doing the same. Emilia glances over the area, and once she confirms that no one is nearby, she gazes red-faced at Subaru. More specifically, she gazes at Subaru's mouth. Emilia, Subaru, it's like, you said that you love me, right? Subaru, yes. I did say that. I love you. Emilia. Well, that, makes me so happy, but... The way that Emilia's sentence trails off gives Subaru a bad feeling. She just said that makes me happy, but... Subaru can think of only one thing that could follow on from this. This sentence ends in, let's just be friends. Subaru, I did mention this before, that I'm waiting for you to notice me, and I'll put in my best effort so that you do. Emilia, that makes me very happy. But, even when you say these things to me, I don't really understand what it is to like someone like that. Subaru says nothing. Emilia, it was the same in the carriage, and it's the same now in the tomb. You're telling me you love me, but I still have nothing I can tell you. I know it's so terrible of me. Hearing her sentence reach its feeble end, Subaru puts his hand to his chest in relief. Emilia's answer is still in standby mode, then. Nothing's changed from before, which is fine. So long as Subaru's repeated and persistent love confessions haven't sickened her, everything's fine. Subaru will offer Emilia his hand without fail, provided she could just get stuck enough to need it. That's the slight discord between Subaru and Emilia's recognition of the other's feelings. Which becomes utterly pointless with Emilia's next statement. Emilia, but... I think that we really need to talk about the baby in my tummy. Subaru. Subaru, pardon me? Emilia, I don't know if they're a boy or a girl yet, but either way we have to shower them in love. But I was never taught about that, so I don't know what to do. You have to talk to the dad for these things. Subaru, no. Wait. Subaru's mind cannot catch up to Emilia as she rapidly talks on. The speed of Emilia's speech has made her out of breath too, and Subaru can see that she's agitated. There is no way that the two of them can converse decently like this. Subaru, Emilia-tan, take deep breaths and calm down a second. I'm doing that right now, taking deep breaths to calm down. Oh hey, there's some snow over here. Subaru squats down, gets a handful of snow, and smacks it onto his face to physically cool himself down. He hears Emilia breathing deeply as he forces himself to think rationally. The baby in Emilia's tummy. Emilia's the mom, and Subaru's the dad. He doesn't get it. Subaru's coming of age still has yet to happen. Subaru, Emilia-tan. When you say baby, you mean like an infant, right? Emilia, exactly. I know it'll be tough with the royal selection, but that's not the baby's fault, and we have to make sure they're happy. I want the baby to get the love it needs from the people who must love it. Emilia's determination is noble and beautiful. But what she's saying doesn't make sense. Subaru has never done anything like that with Emilia. Which means that Emilia and someone else have no, he'd rather not think about that. Subaru, Emilia-tan, you know that babies don't come from storks or cabbage patches, right? Emilia, but when a boy and a girl kiss, that makes a baby. Subaru. He is stunned. At her ignorance and how adorable she is for thinking this. Emilia, Subaru? What's wrong? Hey, Subaru. Emilia doesn't look to understand anything at all as she calls Subaru's name. It somehow looks like her expression has grown stronger thanks to motherly self-awareness. Perhaps that was why Emilia seemed strong to him. Which means that maybe he shouldn't fix this misunderstanding. No. He must. This isn't the time for him to be thinking this stuff. If Emilia keeps on this course, everything's going to continue alongside Emilia's fake pregnancy. She'll be imagining her stomach growing bigger by the day and talking to the thing. Which is cute, but presents its own problems. Emilia, Subaru, maybe you regret kissing me. Subaru, no actually I'm craving your infinite kisses. Emilia, are you now? Subaru regrets his knee-jerk response as the conversation flows deeper into a swamp of misunderstandings. Subaru basically just told Emilia that he's craving infinite baby making. And he is, but that comes later. Emilia needs to be educated properly at this very first stage. But how come Subaru has to be the one to do it? Subaru, see curse you Puck. Subaru curses the cat spirit sleeping deep in the crystal. In his mind, he sees the cat put its paw to his head, stick out its tongue and say, whoops. Subaru, after all his ambivalence, only realizes that he can have Ram or Frederica do the explaining long after Emilia starts pestering him about picking names for the child. Interlude, Emilia Faction-Warlock-Spirit-Spiritualist. Bones creak at the moment of impact, his body whirling through the air before slamming into the wall. Unhalting, the shock pierces through the flimsy woodwork, splinters showering the figure as he shoots out of building. He lands to skid gracelessly over the snow, kicking up frost as he tumbles. The prone figure doesn't even twitch. Everything falls so silent that he could practically be dead. Subaru glances at the person who is shunted through the wall, and at the pugilist inside the building. The assailant notices Subaru's gaze and with a satisfied sigh. Yeah. I goddamn got it done, oi. Says the blonde boy who smiles as he clicks his sharp fangs Garfield. Subaru scratches his head, watching Ram run over to the pummeled Roswell. Why you sure did. He manages to say. Garfield and the others met up with Subaru's group in Sanctuary half a day after Emilia announced her pregnancy, otherwise said, on the morning after the sizable hair fight. Patrash came to Sanctuary pulling a carriage of 6 people, including Garfield. Hearing that the girls they'd gone to rescue in the mansion, Rem, Petra, and Frederica were all okay, and that the rescuers Garfield and Otto were fine too, relieved Subaru. But the bonus that they brought along with them was. Oh look, hi there again, mister. Says a girl with pigtails, bound in a corner of the carriage Emilia, the beastmaster who attacked the mansion with Elsa. The unexpected reunion strikes Subaru dumb. Emilia addresses him with the same friendly tone and demeanor as before in the mansion. May, care to hear me out? This blonde guy has just no clue how to treat ladies. He leaves them sitting there wrapped up in bindings, it's so awful. Don't you think so, mister? Subaru, yeah. Though I don't know what you could have done to me, so I gagged you too. Which means we caught you, but what about Elsa? May, no clue there. But Elsa wouldn't have survived that blaze, would she? So I guess she's dead. Doesn't bother me. Maylee doesn't care in the slightest about the death of her supposed compatriot, Elsa. Subaru furrows his brows. Subaru, you sure must be relaxed if you're looking for better captivity conditions. Doubt you're gonna be having a great time. You did some really bad stuff. May, I know. But I messed up, so it's kinda just like, oh well. And if I go back Mama will just scold me anyway. Subaru, your mom. I know you mentioned this a few times in the mansion, but that means you have some kind of kingpin. Well, just another thing that'll get cleared up by talking to Roswell. May, give me meals thrice a day with no peppers, okay? Maylee cheerily turns her back to Subaru, announcing that the conversation is over. They'll have to deal with her incarceration later. But either way, she's an important witness to what happened in the Roswell mansion attack. It genuinely surprises Subaru that Garfield had the smarts to capture her. Next is the safety of Sanctuary and the Arlem villagers. After they learned that those who evacuated Sanctuary earlier were safe in a nearby town, everyone's well-being was secured. Just when Subaru put his hand to his chest in relief, the first blow of closure struck. Garfield, personally think my amazing self's bein' damn nice to let you're off with just one punch. Garfield swings the arm he used to punch Roswell as he gazes at the open hole in the wall. Though Subaru has quite a few objections about Roswell, and believes that Garfield's fury is justified. Subaru, when that punch is stronger than 10 of my punches combined, I really have to wonder about calling it nice. Garfield, stop being so passive, Captain. Come on, have a go. Garfield snorts and presents something to Subaru. Subaru looks to Garfield's hands to find him holding a branch that he must have gotten in the forest. It's a rather good branch, thick and long. Like a wooden baseball bat. Subaru, where is this going exactly? Garfield, DB a dick move T hit him a bunch. You get one shot, but ain't no one got any right to complain if you use this T make it a good one. Subaru, it's already enough of a dick move to beat him up after what you did. And he's using a weapon. Subaru could start arguing semantics over whether or not this counts as a punch. But Garfield just tilts his head and jerks his chin toward the hole. Garfield, it don't look like anyone agrees with your captain. Subaru, huh? Stricken with a rather rueful Garfield, Subaru looks outside to find that Ram has gotten Roswell back to his feet, where Frederica faces him with her fist brandished over her head. Frederica, brace yourself, master. Frederica's powerful arm cuts through the air as she drives her fist into the same spot Garfield hit, his left cheek. Roswell goes flying through the air yet again, this time coming to a stop several meters away when he slams into a tree trunk. The impact makes snow fall from the treetop, burying Roswell beneath it. After witnessing it all, Frederica claps her hands with a satisfied nod. Subaru, seriously. Everyone endorses this retaliation? Garfield, we gotta get closure, Captain. S gonna be fucking awkward later on if he don't get his payback fair what he did. Ain't like I ain't gonna heal him. And there's Emilia-sama too. Roswell pokes his head out of the snow, his eyes spinning, as Petra and Otto await their turns beside him. Ram pulls Roswell out, while Emilia stands nearby to heal him at a moment's notice. Subaru, I mean Emilia-tan is there as a healer, yes? She absolutely isn't waiting her turn, yes? Though I guess she does have a right to be included. Garfield, think be hard with her personality. But anyway, that's what you got. So come on, Captain. Garfield pushes the wooden bat over to Subaru. He timidly accepts it. Subaru, you won't let me in on the talk if I don't hit him? Garfield, I ain't going that far. It's just that you want to smack the shithead cross the face too, yeah? A shove to his back makes Subaru step out of the house. Garfield shoots Subaru a thumbs up from across the hole in the wall. Looks like he's imitating things from Subaru. With that send-off from his yet uncomfortable brother surrogate, Subaru goes to the very end of the Roswell closure line. Incidentally, Petra just slapped Roswell's face with a soaking cloth. A wet, satisfying thwack echoes throughout Sanctuary. Subaru, ahem, okay. Now that we've had our closure, I think it's time for us to discuss recent events and figure out what we're doing for the future. After clearing his throat, Subaru takes charge of the proceedings and glances over the group. All the important players in this loop are together in the cathedral. Which is quite a number of people, and makes Subaru sentimental about how the household has grown. In the cathedral are the old residents of Roswell Mansion: Subaru, Emilia, Beatrice, Roswell, and Ram, alongside the new Roswell Mansion residents Otto, Frederica, and Petra. And then are the main figures from Sanctuary, Garfield and Louis. REM is currently sleeping in Louis's house, under the care of Pico and the other Louis doubles. Emilia, Subaru, your eyes look kind of distant, are you alright? Are you still not feeling well? Subaru, nope, I'm fine. Just getting sentimental. Team Emilia's doubled in size. Though, add in Sanctuary's people and the villagers from Arlem, and you'll start getting a bigger figure. Emilia, you're right. Emilia nods, her eyes similarly distant. After demonstrating her will by holding her ground and holding the defense lines against the sizable hair, the Sanctuary dwellers in Arlem's Young Men's Brigade must view her more favorably. Just because someone is dependable in a pinch doesn't mean they're a ruler, but it's a world of difference compared to when they were alienating her. If they can interact with her more often, then they'll surely come to learn Emilia's personality. They just need to gain more understanding like that, over time, thinks Subaru. Subaru, and I'm off topic. Okay, back to the point. So we all know what happened in Sanctuary and at the mansion? Now I'd kinda like to exact some responsibility from the guy who triggered it all, or ask for some details, but everyone in the room turns to look at the topical mastermind. Roswell lies limp in a corner of the cathedral, in Ram's lap. His eyes open as he notices the gazes upon him. Roswell, after you have all tormented me so thoroughly, you Styeiter must brutalize me further before you are satisfied? Subaru, you get what you pay for. Emilia-tan even healed you, so stop saying this shameless junk. But anyway, I'm more surprised about Ram. Ram, for what? Subaru sticks his tongue out at the mouthy Roswell as he redirects the conversation onto Ram. She holds Roswell's hand as she rests his head on her lap, her words making Subaru furrow his brows. Subaru, no, I mean. Subaru, I know you weren't in top shape, but I'm impressed how you just kept quiet and watched the Roswell closure. I was certain you'd flip. Ram, foolishness, Barusu. I don't believe in the least that Roswell-sama is utterly incapable of mistakes. But I do wish to take his side when his path is mistaken. Of course I would find myself thinking that way. And you cannot see even that? How foolish. Subaru, don't open and close by doubling up on the fool business. But anyway, with that logic you... Ram, exactly. You were justified to strike Roswell-sama. So I accept that he was stricken. That I tend to him with care and kindness afterwards is my convenience. As always, Ram's exhibitions of love are somewhat masculine. Nobody can complain at her about her devotion to Roswell. Garfield alone does look like he's beset with a dilemma, but he stays silent, probably because he's always been talked out of mentioning anything. Beatrice, you have odd tastes, I suppose. After all those burns to your stomach, were Betty and Miss Silverhair not around, you would have been left with those scars, in fact. The next one to speak is Beatrice, who sits quietly beside Subaru. Her knees are folded up to her chest as she leans against Subaru's left shoulder. She has assisted Emilia in Ram's treatment, erasing the injuries, and so allowed Ram to recover so well. Ram, I give you my gratitude, Beatrice-sama and Emilia-sama. But I would prefer that your saving my life acts as no pretext for you to meddle with affairs of my love. Beatrice, Betty isn't generous to do that, I suppose. If you're going to devote yourself to this wrongdoing man, even if it hurts you again, that's at your liberty, in fact. Roswell, it won't happen again. Beatrice gives Ram her harsh reply, when Roswell hears her and sits up. The two of them catch their breath, and Subaru also gulps. Roswell is not wearing his cosmetics, exposing his unadorned face. Without his clown makeup, the handsome man covers his left eye with his hand and gazes over the people assembled in the cathedral with his blue. He bows his head deeply. Roswell, I will never achieve anything by so arrogantly making sacrifices of us ever again. I swear it on the soul of my mentor. All. Roswell, and I'd rather Beatrice not punch me a third time. Jokes Roswell as he raises his head and looks at Beatrice. Beatrice looks away, sour. Beatrice, the second one was your punishment for moronic blather, I suppose. The third's beyond me, in fact. Roswell, which is how I'd like it to stay. I'd prefer to avoid undergoing any more revenge from you all. Garfield and Subaru-kun were so ruthless that even I had to prepare myself for death. Subaru, you're putting my hit in the same class as that? It couldn't have been that strong. Though Subaru had wanted his punch to be one with some oomph. His strike cleanly struck the tip of Roswell's chin, and what a sight it was to see Roswell too dizzy to stand. Either way, Roswell's statements do feel genuine. Meaning that Subaru is unhesitant to give trusting him a try. It seems that something moved Roswell as he watched Ram risk her life to burn his gospel, contributing to his change of heart. Subaru, though you're being kinda anticlimactic considering we diverged from that gospel you loved. I was seriously thinking that winning you over while you have a breakdown be the last job to do in Sanctuary. Roswell, that bud was plucked before it could sprout. No words of mine can change that I lost our bet. At the moment that I lost myself and defied both my contract and gospel to bring snowfall. And you preformed so excellently that I indeed did do that. Subaru, well, it's because Garfield and Emilia-tan put in serious work. Roswell, you have a bad habit of neglecting to name yourself at moments like this. Either way, the results are the results. You overcame every trial that I thought impossible and liberated Sanctuary. I have lost. Garfield, so hey, Captain. Roswell shrugs with resigned acceptance. Subaru finds himself too stuck to say anything, and Garfield raises his hand and butts in. His glare remains fixed on Roswell, while his sharp fangs clatter. Garfield, are you seriously thinking to add this guy to our team? Honestly, I still ain't quite agreeing with that. Subaru, Garfield. Garfield, well, fucking duh. Fuck was this prick thinking he was doing in Sanctuary and Mansion? Sayin' you weren't there, Captain, Village be rabbit food and my sis and this girl be killed fair fun by the guts lady. We protect this guy and we don't know when he's gonna go back slicing our necks. Howls Garfield as he stomps the floor, a slight quake running through the cathedral. Garfield is correct. They have had their conversations and beatdowns with Roswell to bring closure, but that had only been the preamble for hearing his explanations. Roswell had exposed everyone here to mortal danger for the sake of his own goals, and Subaru has seen everyone lose their lives multiple times. This world that has no sacrifices, where everyone is together and safe, was only accomplished because he had those deaths as a groundwork while he worked together with everyone. Subaru is furious enough that he wants to slap Roswell and interrogate him. He wants to do what Garfield is saying and turn his back on Roswell. Subaru, but still, we need Roswell. Garfield, Captain. Subaru, we absolutely need Roswell's help if Emilia is going to win the royal selection. She loses this guy as her supporter, and Emilia's out of the running. We'll make him pay, of course, but we can't just say okay goodbye now. Garfield, you're really fucking telling me to forgive a guy who tried to kill my family. Subaru. Garfield's emotional words pierce Subaru. No matter how Subaru tries to pacify him with words, Garfield will not agree. He had almost lost Frederica, and almost lost Louis. This boy had spent over 10 years training himself, so that he could protect his family. Roswell is his unforgivable nemesis. Frederica, I forgive the master. Garfield, sis. But the one to rebut Garfield is his very own blood relative, Frederica, who had almost been murdered. Her long, blonde hair sways as she speaks. Garfield's eyes shoot open in shock. Garfield, fuck were you saying? This shithead tried to. Frederica, and given that, I am still alive. Because you saved me, Garf. Garfield, you're talking from fucking hindsight. He tried. To kill you. And Nana. And ain't that all there is to it? Frederica, the master has cared for me for over a decade. Garfield's shoulders heave as Frederica narrows her eyes. Her gaze inspires compassion, as she is perhaps moved by her matured brother's anger. Frederica, that I may achieve my goals, I accepted the hand that the master offered me. I have learned much over the time since, and now I am here. To speak in more common terms, I exploited the master's generosity for my own purposes. Would our debts not be even? Garfield, don't fucking treat debts on the same level as life. You don't know when he'll betray Otto, I apologize for this when you're so enthusiastic, but would you mind if I interjected? Garfield tries to argue, but this time Otto pulls the brakes. Garfield's furious gaze turns to Otto, who has his hand raised. But Otto lets the glare wash off him as he soothingly says. Otto, now just calm down, calm down. Otto, will put aside Garfield's emotional argument for a moment, and consider Margrave Roswell's likelihood of committing something like this again. I think we're safe to believe that he won't, at least momentarily. Garfield? Fuckery, you're saying prick. You're fucking asleep? I'll put your lights out, boy. Otto, the contract, remember? The instant that this affair reached an obvious conclusion, a contract was bound between Natsuki-san and the Margrave. Correct, Margrave? Otto is entirely calm as he deals with a seething Garfield. It is also bold of him to verify the state of the contract not with Subaru but with Roswell. Roswell realizes Otto's intentions, his eyes widening somewhat. Roswell, Otto-kun fifth thorough is correct. Owing to the contract between myself and Subaru-kun, I cannot defy Subaru-kun's course. Garfield, course, be in? Subaru, he dumps the gospel and helps make Emilia ruler. That's the contract between me and Roswell. He can't pull this crap anymore. Subaru takes over, Garfield grinding his teeth in anger. Subaru has won the bet. Roswell is bound by the contract, preventing him from forcing the future to follow the writ of the missing gospel. Though it's another question as to whether that makes Roswell harmless. Garfield, that still don't close books on what he did. If we settle this with I'm so sorry, I won't do it again, we ain't ever getting Rogos as revenge demands more than one hand. Garfield's shouting emphasizes his stance even still, creating a divide of opinion among the group regarding Roswell's deeds. Subaru, Otto, and Frederica accept them. Garfield and Petra reject them. Emilia and Louis are undecided. Subaru will need to wait and watch to see how Beatrice and Ram fall. Their relationships with Roswell differ from everyone else's. Subaru, Petra. Like Garfield, Petra is adamantly furious at Roswell. She grips her skirt, her face red as Subaru calls her. Petra, I'm still against it no matter what you say, Subaru-sama. The master tried, our lord tried to do something terrible to the villagers. Even though everyone trusted him. Even though I thought our lord was a good person. Roswell, it does hurt to hear that. Even Roswell has to frown as a little girl lambastes him. Petra is probably the one best reflecting the general feelings of the populace, without any ulterior interfaction motives or complicated circumstances. Not because she's a child. But because her attitude clearly speaks of the rage she feels toward Roswell for betraying her honest opinion of him as her lord. The villagers of Arlem and Sanctuary have not been informed that Roswell was behind this whole mess. Petra is present at this meeting as a sort of representative because, after the bits and pieces of conversation she heard in the mansion led her near to the truth, she never spoke up to secure absolute conviction. They are trusting in that cleverness of hers. If Petra had tried to thoughtlessly dig for answers as any child her age would, they might have said some junk to deceive her. But they didn't. Subaru, I know I'm repeating myself, but we need Roswell. If we drop Roswell here, we close Emilia's path. You can say you don't want to work with him, or conversely we could bind him in ropes to get him to, either way he's working with us. Garfield, we ain't gonna convince each other, Captain. Subaru, we're not. So we need to find a compromise. What do you want Roswell to do that will satisfy you for now? And apologies, but we can't have you kill him. Garfield, TCH. To keep Garfield in check as he starts getting to his feet, Beatrice stands up. Short as she is, it's more than enough to look down at the boy as he sits. Garfield clicks his tongue and shifts his glare to Roswell. Garfield, first is securing TH necessities fair TH Gramps and Grands in Sanctuary. You're gonna make sure everyone's safe, no matter if they're staying or going. S the first concrete step T achieving what Sis is trying to do. Roswell, very well, accepted. Garfield, I ain't gonna be hearing any excuses about not having TH funds cause the mansion burned down. Roswell, the building that burned was an auxiliary residence of the Mathers. The main residency is elsewhere. I try not to be so grossly unprepared as to fall into something as ridiculous as bankruptcy. Roswell's confident reply shocks Subaru. It's news to him that the incinerated mansion was a side residence. He starts looking stupid for worrying about where they would live now. Garfield, and following from that condition, 2 more promis, no, a contract. Roswell. Garfield raises 2 fingers. Roswell falls silent. Garfield lowers 1 finger. Garfield, first's what TH Captain said. You pledge to everyone here that you'll stick to those terms. That you ain't pulling any more of this shit. Roswell, yes of course. And the other? Garfield, easy. You violate that, and my amazing fangs mash your head to pieces. Frigid bloodlust emanates from Garfield. The murderousness that should be spearing only into Roswell is so intense that its ripples brush against everyone's skin like a razor blade. Roswell, very well. Let us tie the contract. So when Roswell accepts it only a few seconds later, and Subaru feels the bloodlust dissipate like an ebbing wave, his body untenses, and he breathes a sigh. Garfield sits cross-legged with his elbow on his knee and hand on his chin, looking unsatisfied. Garfield, that's all I got for TH moment. You best leave it there too, Mississippi. Petra, but... Garfield, it ain't gonna make your friends or family happy if I tell them. Petra, bordering on tears, looks up at Frederica beside her. Frederica nods, and Petra suffocates her sobs by pressing her face to Frederica's chest. It's enough to pain anyone's heart. Subaru, anyway, while we still have questions about how we're securing aid for Arlem's and Sanctuary's villagers, and where we're going now that the mansion's in ashes, and basically what we're doing, can we say that we've finished exacting responsibility and we all had our say on this? After waiting for Petra's sobbing to stop, Subaru sums up everyone's thoughts. If nobody objects, then they have completed the first stage of conversations about the sanctuary and mansion affairs. Now they just need to discuss the other issues one by one. Excuse me. But someone does raise their hand in the silence. And it's the leader of their group, who has not yet given her opinion on Roswell, Emilia. Everyone's gaze focuses on her as she looks to Subaru, seeking permission to speak. Subaru, go ahead, Emilia Tan. Feel free to say anything. Emilia, then I'll oblige. Emilia nods at Subaru and looks at Roswell. Roswell raises an eyebrow, looking rather surprised as he waits for Emilia to speak. And she does. Emilia, Roswell hasn't done the most important thing yet. This discussion isn't over until he does. Roswell, most important thing. Roswell fails to figure out what Emilia is talking about, looking confused. Subaru tilts his head too as he contemplates what Emilia could be trying to say. Emilia looks over the group and with a quiet sigh. Emilia, when you do something bad, you have to say you're sorry. All. Emilia, everyone's been telling Roswell to do this and do that to prove that he's repented, and Roswell swore to his teacher that he won't do anything bad again, but before we even get to that, isn't there something he has to say? Roswell, did you say it even once? I didn't hear it. Her cheeks red with anger, Emilia rails on Roswell. She is saying things so juvenile that it leaves everyone speechless. But Emilia is not joking in the least, and is truly, demonstrably mad. Emilia is angry. Even though she rarely ever gets angry at all. Except it's happening and Emilia is mad. To ensure that something so obvious but that everyone forgot does happen. Subaru, Roswell. Subaru looks at the astonished Roswell and smiles as he looks to catch him off guard. Subaru, apologize, Roswell. If we're going to doing things together, then you're obligated to, just as a person. Roswell. Subaru shares Emilia's stance, the sentiment spreading to everyone in the cathedral. Roswell perceives what this sea of gazes is seeking from him, and swallows his breath. Emilia, That'll do. The way that Emilia smiles after seeing Roswell's apology leaves an incredible impression. Subaru makes an indescribable expression as he looks down at the woman in the coffin. Roswell, Wayawa at an impolite face to make Yel looking at my teacher, says Roswell as he peers at Subaru from aside. Inside the deepest room of the tomb, Subaru and Roswell face each other with the coffin between them, so that they can speak without anyone intruding. But before that, Subaru, this is honestly your teacher, the witch Echidna? Roswell, indeed. Her body rests eternal in the spellstone, her mortal beauty preserved. Living was worth it, when I can meet her again as I am now. Subaru, all I really have to say about your descendant hopping super motivated foe stalking is yuck. Roswell, Beatrice hit me with the exact same comment. Roswell seems to be having fun, but Subaru feels no urge to smile. Beatrice told Subaru that Roswell has been perpetuating his life by transcribing his soul. Subaru had told a joke about something similar before, but he had never even dreamed that it would be correct. But it does make him agree with the family's fanaticism for Echidna, since it was all actually just Roswell. Subaru, do you feel guilty at all about your descendants? I guess the answer's obvious. Roswell, the Mathers family was made for that purpose. I began it, I continued it, I constructed it. It doesn't discomfort me, no matter who criticizes me. Subaru, the quintessential stalker. Roswell, surely not. Regardless, there's something I'd like to confirm. About this person you saw in the trial, who is not my teacher called Echidna. Roswell narrows his eyes as he speaks. Subaru narrows his eyes as well. There are differences between the Echidna that Roswell is talking about, and the Echidna that Subaru met in the dream castle. That was the shock Subaru got when he glimpsed the woman in the coffin. Subaru looks down at her figure once again. Long white hair and pale skin. Beautiful features and a sleek black dress. Her distinctive characteristics are identical to Echidna's. But she is obviously someone else. The Echidna that Subaru knows is slightly younger than the woman in the coffin. Her features erred more on the cute than the beautiful side, and her hair was cut shorter than the woman's. They do look alike. If someone called them sisters, Subaru would believe it. However, Roswell, my teacher, had no relatives. She had no elder sister, and no one to call a daughter except Beatrice. I know this better than anyone else. Subaru, so, who was the Echidna in the trial? It was her, but with her youth restored, isn't what it feels like either. They're different people. I can tell that this isn't just a thing about ages. Roswell, anyone intruding on the trial must be connected. If this person was the one managing the trial, they are assuredly connected. Perhaps some external party took action while I was unaware, would be conceivable. But Roswell doesn't continue, but Subaru senses that he has dismissed whatever he was going to say as impossible. He doesn't have any basis for it, but perhaps Roswell is confident in his stalking proficiency. It's a confidence telling him it's impossible that someone could do something bad to his teacher without him knowing about it. Which is gross. Roswell, I feel that you're imagining something rather impolite. Subaru, blame your imagination, or actually just blame you. Anyway, me and Emilia both saw Echidna during the trial. Or at least an Echidna that isn't this one. Emilia had been present when Subaru first saw the woman in the coffin. That was when they realized that the woman Beatrice called mother was not the person they called Echidna. Who was the girl in the dream? Without ever reaching any conclusions, Subaru wound up starting this talk with Roswell. Subaru, we can't use the trial systems to enter the dream again. Roswell, the tomb's functions were ceased by a destruction of the algorithm. The art for it is lost, and the requirements are complex. And the miasma permeating this tomb has escaped. This tomb is just an ordinary, historical stone structure now. Subaru, I see. Disappointment that he cannot confirm it, and disappointment that he cannot see her again, assault Subaru simultaneously. Just for some reason, Subaru didn't find interacting with her and the witch is so bad, even factoring in the whole betrayal thing. So losing the opportunity to do so summons melancholy in Subaru. Subaru, we'll put the unchangeable stuff off for later. So, what are you thinking to do with the woman in the coffin? Bury her? Roswell, I'll neither bury nor burn her. Subaru-kun, I'd like you not to misunderstand. I desire reunion with my teacher, but that doesn't mean I've been yearning to meet my teacher's cadaver. This is merely one step along the way. Subaru, what do you mean? Subaru raises his brows, wariness and distrust swelling within him. Subaru had thought that Roswell's desired reunion with his crush was a face-to-face meeting with the corpse in this tomb. He hadn't considered it until he learned that her corpse was actually in the tomb, but the second that Subaru found out that Roswell's mentor was inside here, of course he began to think it. But Roswell easily rejects that idea. Roswell, I desire to speak again with my teacher, with blood running through her, soul housed inside her, life breathed within her. Retrieving her corpse is simply the first step. Subaru, you're going to resurrect the dead. This world has magic to bring back the dead. Roswell, make sure you don't misunderstand. This possibility is present because it is her. There is no way to bring back lives that have met a conventional death. The OD Lagna would never permit such convenient magic as resurrection. Subaru, OD Lagna? Subaru scrunches his face at the new word. Roswell, OD Lagna is, how to say, a stockpile of mana in the fount of the world. No, supposing that the world itself were a living creature, then it would be its nexus, and the OD of the world. Though we can only imagine as to its exact location, and whether it is sentient or not. Subaru, the OD of the world, wouldn't permit it, meaning? Roswell, to explain that would require quick perusal of the entire history of magic to this day. Subaru, in 3 sentences. Roswell, how harsh. Roswell stokes his chin as he considers what to say. Then he begins explaining as coherently and succinctly as he can. Roswell, all of the magic in this world was devised by past magicians. The first incidence of magic was when an individual with outstanding talent in the manipulation of mana began casting magic of their type. As more people became capable of magic and disparities in proficiency began to arise, it became difficult to classify the phenomenon without assigning names or classes. Subaru, that's when magic got names and was split into the separate type affinities. Roswell, yes. While magical techniques and knowledge was expanding, people with incredible talent for it began being born. They devised novel uses of mana, separated from the existing forms of magic, to create new magic. The development of magic has always proceeded as mundane magicians comprehensively overapply the novel discoveries from a prior selection of geniuses. Subaru, kind of a spiteful lecture, since you're one of the geniuses. Roswell, I may have gone through unpleasant times, once or twice. In every world and universe out there, the overly proficient ones are alienated. There was a time when Roswell was immature, and suffered those gazes and obstacles. Though nowadays he would definitely smile back and secretly get revenge. Subaru, so what does this have to do with OD Lagna? Roswell, the existence of a font for magic and the power called mana. Research investigating into the topic proceeded as people tested unprecedented approaches and methods for using mana. Those who created magic with shocking effects began to stand out even among the geniuses. Each case of this magic produced results beyond compare to previous magic, such that a single magician could alter a region's geography. And when they did, they all saw exactly the same thing. Subaru says nothing. Roswell, with its dim glow, it was the mana that they so naturally manipulated. But this was a mass of power overwhelmingly more vast than any mana they had touched before. These magicians, with their cognizance of so-called forbidden magic, all witnessed this expanse of mana, and their minds soon fell ill. Subaru, and that was OD Lagna, the fountain of the world? Roswell, just as humans fear injury or disease, the world rejects those liable to shake its foundations. Is what some first started saying about OD Lagna. The true common point between those whose minds were broken by witnessing OD Lagna was that they reached new heights of magic that would have rewritten the practice's history. It's unclear how powerful their magic was. They had divulged some portion of the theory behind their magic, but before they could publicly exhibit the completed algorithm and have it adopted for use, the magician who invented it would invariably have their mind broken. Subaru, then resurrection would be one of them? Roswell, I wish to see my dearly departed again. The desire is omnipresent, shared by everyone, and more than a few geniuses were motivated by it. Though, before they could reach anyone, they all lost their minds to OD Lagna. How sardonic, thinks Subaru. It isn't clear whether OD Lagna truly exists, or that OD Lagna destroyed the magicians' minds. But still, they sought to find the limit of their abilities. To realize a goal that everyone would yearn for. Roswell, one theory states that OD Lagna is the consciousness that rules over everything in the world. And though it warrants skepticism, perhaps OD Lagna could be the one bestowing people with blessings, is the nonsense that people have come up with. Subaru, trying to stay uninvolved, and then involving itself, that celestial bunch never makes sense, no matter where you are. Roswell, that celestial bunch is an entertaining way to put it. Ignorant to the logic behind Subaru's epithet as he treats OD Lagna as a god, Roswell laughs. Subaru hadn't expected this discussion, but their real topic is elsewhere of OD Lagna. Subaru brings the conversation back to Subaru, so, your reunion with your teacher won't enrage OD Lagna. Roswell, exactly. It doesn't use any forbidden arts or any special powers or algorithms. In fact, I'm far more worried that you would be the one displeasing OD Lagna. Subaru, honestly I was thinking the same. Return by death. Subaru doesn't intend to reveal its requirements to Roswell in detail, but it's no exaggeration that Subaru's ability is conceivably touching on the resurrection taboo. Subaru has used return by death to alter his own doomed fate, and even save the lives of others. If OD Lagna witnessed this, there is no way that Subaru would pass its harsh standards. Unless, perhaps, the entity that allows Subaru to return by death is strong enough to survive OD Lagna. Subaru, just the idea makes me shudder. Anyway, your methods for this are. Roswell, sorry, but I'm not going to tell you that now. Subaru shakes his head and gets back to talking, when Roswell fires that statement. Subaru's eyes dart about in confusion for a moment as he fails to understand what was said. Subaru, wah. What did you say? Roswell, only way what you heard. I'm not going to tell you my methods for achieving my ultimate goal. I'm rather sure that nothing in the terms of our contract requires me to. Subaru, I mean, yeah, but come on. Roswell, I want to make this clear to you, Subaru-kun, says Roswell coldly. He walks around the coffin to come to Subaru's side, looking down at him as he raises his finger. Roswell, I have lost my guide the gospel, and lost sight of the path of how things should be. But that doesn't make me abandon my goals in the least. Our contract prevents me from using my past approach. And even supposing I laid pointless obstacles before you, Garfield would rip my throat open, so I am also barred from that. Subaru, yeah, exactly. So what can you do? What path can you pick except one where you reveal your goal, and come to us for help? Roswell, that is simple. I will oversee you. Subaru. Oversee. It's definitely not a peaceful word, and it renders Subaru speechless. Though Roswell's eyes gleam in different colors as he looks down at Subaru, they are lit with identical emotion. Roswell, fortunately, your goal of making Emilia-sama the ruler overlaps with my path to achieving my goal. This is where you were supposed to secure an unshakable will of iron, devoting yourself to Emilia-sama no matter the loss, and become a knight riddled in wounds. Subaru says nothing. Roswell, but that route is defunct. You instead chose to walk a more painful, more agonizing path of thorns. Though I do respect you for it, I also pity you. Subaru, excuse me? He can't let that pass. Subaru glares at Roswell, who shakes his head. He is definitely doing so out of pity for Subaru. He faces his palm to Subaru, who is both irritated and confused. Roswell, this is where you should have learned what it is to lose something. You should have become a sage, who even in the face of loss, stringently protects only what is precious. I know how it sounds, but I wanted to save you. Subaru, what's so sagely about that? What is so clever about accepting loss? Roswell, you have rejected loss, chosen to salvage everything, and you will hurt for it. You will repeatedly suffer wounds beyond repair, repeatedly suffer loss, frantically attempt to regain what you lost, the invisible hurt compounding perpetually. And I pity that. Subaru, HK. Roswell, and so I will not be lenient about your refusal to be a sage, and decision to be a fool. As expected, yes? After all, you're the one who chose this. Roswell's hand lands on Subaru's shoulder. Subaru trembles as Roswell draws his face near to Subaru's, and whispers in his ear. Roswell, should you lose anyone who you needed to protect, I will swiftly incinerate the survivors. Subaru. Roswell, you've chosen to save everything. You must not miscarry a single thing. A world of loss must not lead to the future. So long as a future where you accept loss could lead to a future I do not desire, I will invalidate it. Now that the gospel is gone, you are what guides me to my goal, Subaru-kun. Only you and your path. Roswell draws his face away and gives Subaru's chest a light shove. It isn't particularly strong, but Subaru pitches back as if he's been stricken, his breath catching as his back hits the wall. This man, Roswell L. Mathers, is terrifying. His conceptions have changed. He has stopped relying on the gospel, and will never do anything to throw Subaru or Emilia into adversary again. He will assist Subaru if Subaru desires it, and will put in his all to keep Emilia en route to the throne. But if Subaru makes even the slightest mistake, Roswell will instantly overturn and ruin everything. No lie and no deception. Roswell will absolutely do it. Roswell, what? There's no need to be so scared. Provided that you continue to fulfill your roles, I will offer you my utmost assistance. That is the contract between us. Subaru really taught me to be more careful when looking at contracts. Roswell, your duty is to ensure that not a single person present today is lost, Subaru-kun. Without ever losing a single person, lead Emilia-sama to the top. Should you achieve that, I will also fulfill my goal. I will see my teacher again. Subaru weakly hangs his head. Roswell gives a long sigh at him, and nods. His shoes peel on the stone as he corrects his posture. Roswell, upon my name of Margave Roswell L. Mathers, once we return to the main estate, I shall appoint you, Natsuki Subaru, as knight. The promise will be fulfilled. Subaru. Accolade. Something that Subaru has yearned for, the right to stand at Emilia's side. Hearing it after everything else in this conversation does diminish his joy, but after everything Roswell has said, he will definitely stay to his word. He gains no benefit from not supporting Subaru. Seeing Subaru silently nod, Roswell turns to exit the room. This conversation is over, is what he must mean. But his footsteps pause before he can exit, and he turns back. Roswell, right. I did just tell you that I'd be helping you wholeheartedly, so here's another piece of information. Subaru, what is it? Roswell, I hired the Gut Hunter to kill Beatrice, but both this and the previous attack from the Beastmaster are completely unrelated to me. Subaru, huh? What more could there possibly be? Subaru had thought, his jaw dropping as Roswell speaks. Unable to comprehend what Roswell is saying, Subaru remains utterly still as he seeks further explanation. Roswell closes one eye. Roswell, there's nothing to add. I was the commissioner for the affair in the capital, and requested Beatrice's assassination. But I never asked anyone to kill Frederica or Petra, and had no time to tell them the particulars. I had been following the Gospel's writ and placed the order before the selection started, you see. Subaru, but that can't. I mean, she and Elsa are from the same group. So. Roswell, someone other than myself was operating to attack the mansion. That's what it means. Subaru. Roswell, adversity never seems to end, and isn't there worth in resisting it? With that cynical statement, Roswell's footsteps grow steadily distant. The voice echoing through Subaru's head throws his mind into disarray as he stands, utterly still, his back leaned against the tomb's cold wall. All the issues he had supposedly resolved still sit smoldering in his chest. Feeling heat from the embers, Subaru clutches his head, and sighs deeply. You look depressed, in fact. What saves Subaru, brooding as he is the astonished voice of a young girl. Subaru sits there as he sees her dress sway. His gaze traces up the luxurious fabric to find an adorable face looking down at him, arms crossed. Subaru, Biko. Beatrice, I don't know what Roswell told you, but my contractor needs to stop making that face, I suppose. It reflects poorly on Betty, in fact. Subaru, that's a real issue. And I just told you how awesome I'd be. Oh hell, this is pathetic. Subaru slaps his cheeks and shakes his head. Beatrice kneels down to reach Subaru's eye level, before narrowing her eyes. Beatrice, it seems that he said some terrible things, I suppose. I don't mind hearing out your whining, in fact. As a temporary, special service, I suppose. Subaru, just the sentence whining into a little girl's chest is abysmal, so I'll give that a pass. If it really is looking bad, then I'll instantly be there though. Beatrice, well, if you're so inclined then I'll deal with it with you, in fact. Beatrice snorts as she gets to her feet. Subaru lifts himself up as well. He looks ahead, gazing at Beatrice as she stares at the coffin. Subaru, that's your mother, there. Beatrice, and she isn't the echidna that you know, I suppose. Neither of them know what this means. But Beatrice is glad that she got to see her mother again, even if as a corpse. If the one sleeping here had been the echidna that Subaru knows, disappointment wouldn't be enough to describe it for Beatrice or Roswell. Though Subaru is fine for Roswell to do some anguishing, he doesn't want to see Beatrice in any more sorrow. After all, Beatrice has already lost one of her desired reunions. Subaru, I wonder what happened to Louis Meyer's crystal. Beatrice, I don't know, in fact. Murmurs Beatrice, leaving Subaru without a clue of what to do. Echidna's laboratory rests deep in Sanctuary's woods. Inside is a system to produce Louis duplicates, and the original Louis Meyer who acts as both nucleus and operations for the barrier around Sanctuary. A girl named Louis Meyer is sealed in the crystal there, like this woman in the coffin. Or should be. Because the Louis Meyer crystal has disappeared. Beatrice had gone to the facility with Subaru, determined to see her old friend again, and was dumbstruck at the sight. Subaru cursed that he hadn't gone in to check the facility himself beforehand. A giant hole gaped open on the floor where the crystal had been, both the supporting base and Louis Meyer's body absolutely gone. Subaru wondered whether they had fallen into the underground beneath the rancid, stinking room, and asked Emilia to send minor spirits down to check to no avail. Beneath the facility was a cavern that led to the forest through an underground passage. Whoever took the crystal knew about the passage's existence, and had been waiting for the barrier to be broken before grabbing the crystal is the only theory he can conceive. The thief's motives aren't the issue here. The issue is that they have stolen the chance for Beatrice to see her friend again. She may be acting strong, but she must be worried. Subaru will get it back someday, and this reunion will occur. He is determined for it. Subaru, while I can sound as pompous as I want, I'm still insignificant by myself. Subaru rolls his shoulders and stretches his arms, wryly recognizing his own powerlessness. He is relying primarily on Beatrice, but also Emilia and Garfield for strength. And for smarts he can depend on Otto, or loath to say it but Roswell. Everything else is Frederica and Petra. He truly does have others compensating for a lot. As always, Subaru's skill and ability remains feeble and limited. Beatrice, Subaru, what are you grinning about, I suppose? Subaru, just thinking, there are times where you're weak and pathetic, but there's also times where you're not. All I can do is leave it to you. Beatrice, it feels that I understand what you're saying, while simultaneously I don't in fact. Though she cannot discern what Subaru means, Beatrice smiles, perceiving that he is counting on her. Subaru gives her a nod. Subaru, well yeah. Subaru, I'm not expecting you to figure out that much. It'd be pathetic if you saw through me. But anyway, man, spiritualists are amazing. I've never done magic like that before, all got me really fired up. Beatrice, I suppose. Subaru, though that was another case of me being completely dependent on you, so I can't go bragging about it. I mean, I can say I'm a spiritualist, but it hasn't exactly hit me yet. His contract with Beatrice has been consumed by the course of events around the library's collapse, making it a rather brief affair. Though he felt a definite connection when she called his name and settled herself in his arms, which seems to be enough. Beatrice, Subaru. I have something important to tell you, in fact. Subaru, Beatrice looks serious. Subaru tilts his head, waiting for her to speak. Beatrice, your contract with Betty means you're a spiritualist, but Betty is very different from most spirits, in fact. So you would best consider yourself as being slightly different from a genuine spiritualist, I suppose. Subaru, well, the other spirits I'm aware of aren't humanoid, and Puck's the only one that's sentient, talks, and moves around. So I get you're a little different. The only other spiritualists that Subaru knows would be Emilia and Julius. Emilia is contracted to Puck, and also has a relationship with the minor spirits. Julius has multiple contracts with multiple lesser spirits, stronger than minor spirits, and should be operating as quite the powerful spiritualist. One exception to the pattern is the evil spirit Betelgeuse, but Subaru would rather not remember him, and so he will be omitted. Exceptions are exceptions after all. Beatrice, Betty is, well, strictly speaking, Betty and Bubby are diverged from the principles of other spirits, in fact. Mother, the witch echidna made us, meaning that we are man-made spirits, I suppose. With that said, it's logistically difficult to create us by infallible means. While Betty is inestimably powerful compared to ordinary spirits, I do have some flaws, in fact. Subaru, flaws? Beatrice looks ashamed as Subaru voices the word. Beatrice is prideful, and has incredible respect for her mother. It must hurt her to acknowledge that she has flaws at her most fundamental aspect. But Beatrice casts that weakness away with a sigh. Beatrice, Bubby and Betty each have different flaws, but one of my flaws is monopolization of my contractor, I suppose. Subaru, monopolization of your contractor? Beatrice, put simply, merely by preserving a contract with Betty, the contractor exhausts practically all of their capabilities as a spiritualist. So, being that you're in a contract with me, Subaru, you can't contract with any spirits except Betty, I suppose. That applies be the spirit minor or lesser, in fact. Subaru, okay, got it. Grasping Beatrice's point, Subaru nods several times. Preserving a contract with Beatrice uses so much of Subaru's resources that he has none left to contract with other spirits. While Emilia can ask the minor spirits, rather than Puck, for their aid, Subaru is unable to do this. Subaru, well, that's kind of a disappointment, but I'll accept it anyway. There's heaps of benefits to a contract with you ignoring the CONS. And I'm not going to let go of you to go making contracts with some dumb minor spirits. Beatrice, gee good. Hearing that reply, Beatrice's tense cheeks relax somewhat. But she instantly erases that expression, clears her throat, and... Beatrice, there's still more left, I suppose. Though it's a very minor thing compared to that other one, in fact. No need to think too hard as you listen, I suppose. Subaru, okay. Well, I'm drowning in stuff I don't know here, so please just tell me anything. Beatrice, so well, Betty is a little, yes, just a little higher grade compared to most spirits, and I have poor mileage, in fact. Subaru, mileage, makes you sound like a car. It takes a lot of MP to use powerful magic or summon creatures in video games. That balance between cost and power is the mileage, but why is Beatrice having such a hard time saying this? Subaru, huh? But for having poor mileage you use tons of magic against the hair, and you let me use magic too, and you weren't sapping anything from me either, right? Beatrice, that was using mana from the stockpile I had amassed over a long period, I suppose. Had I been taking the mana I needed for that fight, not even thousands of you would suffice, in fact. You can thank me for that, I suppose. Subaru, well sure. I can't imagine how strained I'd be if I tried doing any of that. Consecutive Minyas and that final Al-Shamak. One Shamak is enough to exhaust Subaru's store. There is no way he could have provided for all of that. Subaru, but we can't keep doing that, can we? I'm your contractor, so of course I need to supply you with mana. Beatrice, I'm expecting you to, in fact. Man-made spirits like Betty and Bobby are substantiated OD, meaning we don't naturally produce mana, I suppose. So we need to get mana from the atmosphere, or our contractor, in fact. And I can only receive my mana from people, I suppose. Subaru, okay. Then how were you getting by in the mansion? Beatrice, I was taking bits from everyone there, in fact. Beatrice must feel guilty about it, since she looks away as she talks. She looks embarrassed, and her gaze grows even redder as Subaru stares at her. While Subaru doesn't quite understand what nuanced mana drains have among spirits, going off Beatrice's reaction, it is apparently not very good manners. Subaru, anyway you look like you're very sorry about it, so I won't probe into it. So supposing we save the mana you collect from me for everyday functioning, how much stored mana do you have left? Subaru's mana reserves are paltry and Beatrice consumes lots of mana. Meaning that they will have to use Beatrice's powerful magic sparingly, chipping away at her reserved mana bit by bit. So Subaru must confirm how much mana she has remaining. Beatrice, none, I suppose. Subaru, Beatrice, none, in fact. I used everything I stored over those 4 centuries in that battle, I suppose. The loss of the Forbidden Archive also took quite an amount, and that final Al-Shamak was the killer, in fact. I have no mana left in reserve, I suppose. So what? That means Beatrice has no mana stored up. Subaru's mana is barely enough to cover Beatrice's day-to-day. Beatrice consumes lots of mana, and doesn't have the mana to use her powerful magic. Subaru's contract with Beatrice means that he can't enlist the minor spirits for help. Subaru, so, did we just make a team of a spirit and spiritualist that can't use magic? Beatrice, well, I suppose that's one way you could put it, in fact. Subaru, how else could you put it? The hell? Are you kidding me, is this seriously happening? Going from the results, what Subaru achieved by becoming a spiritualist was acquiring a little girl. Subaru, actually I'm really worried about where this is going now. Are you sure we'll be okay? Beatrice, hoopsie, I suppose. Subaru, it's not funny. This is the newborn pairing of 2 people that create half a spiritualist. Their arguing echoes, far, far, forever through the tomb. Appendix, Advent. Footsteps peel through the cold, dark chamber. Not a speck of light beams into the space, making the path a charge through dark or shadow. But the footsteps sound without hesitation, traveling through the rancid chamber with a casual gait. With such ease that they may as well be traversing their own room. Water drips. Insects squirm. Mud and gravel crunches underfoot. This place inspires nothing but discomfort, but the silhouette gives not the slightest murmur of discontent. Hordes of insects open a path as they flee the silhouette, their stronghold disturbed. Water flows over their feet, the gentle downward slope their guide as they walk on. Eventually, the silhouette stops, their long hair flowing behind them as they look up. As before, there is no light. But their eyes shine with a gleam called conviction. Dim lights dance as wind whips around the silhouette's feet. Their long, pink hair and long-sleeved robe flutter in the breeze. At their feet, at the point from which the wind blows, a circle draws itself in the ground. So the starter algorithm still works. With that murmur, the silhouette atop the glowing circle, the girl levitates. She ascends as if riding on an invisible floor, rushing for the roof of the dark. That instant, as if ghosting through the bedrock, the girl launches to the outside. The sunlight burns her eyes. The girl closes her eyelids. It takes exactly 10 seconds for her to open her eyes again. Sun rays piece through her eyelids and into her eyeballs. Prompted by rebellion toward that, and some amount of impatience, she keeps her eyes open wide. What she sees is the sun rising anew. It's far less emotional than I expected. Faced with the daylight, the girl tilts her head. Indeed, not a single ripple of emotion arises in her apathetic eyes. After all her time spent with a false sun, she had hoped that seeing the real thing again would move her, but the results are unpromising. Either way, I've safely left the barrier. Meaning that the thing safely defeated the trial, frustratingly. I'll give my thanks for that and no more. If that hadn't happened, it would have been inordinately difficult to leave Sanctuary. She would catch herself in her own scheme. When she thinks of the girl who dealt with that mess, she feels something akin to displeasure sprout in her heart. Well, it's no issue. I can't be too reckless in this body, and I might as well traipse about for a while to fill in the blanks. The girl flexes her hands open and closed, checking her body's condition. Duplicates of a progenitor body vessel, and a subsumed soul of the same nature. She has fit her soul to it and anchored in, but familiarizing to it will take time. He already gave me a name, after all. I think I'll call myself Omega. She smiles as she treads on the grass, slipping through gaps in the trees to exit the forest. The journey is somewhat troubling for a young girl's legs, but it's no matter. The fatigue and pain prove that her soul and body are connected. She must enjoy her long-lost life in abundance. Beatrice has left the forbidden archive, Roswell has lost his gospel. Though considering the man who pocketed the burnt remains and Garfield's persistent rage, the fires are still smoldering yet. How will he face what's to come? Perhaps I'll watch over him, from the sun and in the shade. Purposefully excluding the girl that irks her, she begins to walk. There is a world where she's going. What never grows dull for her, abundant, endlessly sating her curiosity, a mountain of treasures for the dead thirst for knowledge incarnate. If I'm like this, perhaps I'll understand someday. Along her path, the girl sights a ring of flowers and smiles. She plucks a flower petal, sniffs its scent, pops it in her mouth. Even beautiful flowers shall wilt. Why must the flowers wither? Are even the beautiful memories shared between people destined to wane? Ah, why must love fade? Muttering, her long pink hair swaying, the girl steps forth. Again the witch is unleashed on the world. End of Arc 4, The Everlasting Covenant.